Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ariana, but you can call me Ari, and today we are going over 10 books that are releasing in 2026 by Black authors. Before we do that though, I do want to thank everyone right now for helping us get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I know it may seem like such a drop in the ocean compared to the expansiveness that is content in this world, but it's my drop in the ocean and I'm very proud of it because I think it's so interesting that there are people who are interested in listening to me and engaging with me talk about books on the internet, something that I purely do out of enjoyment. So I thank all of you who have subscribed, all of you who are subscribing, and thank you for liking this video and continuing to support me on this journey. I will also like to add that as I am learning this platform, as I am learning my own voice, not just as a creator, but as a 27-year-old Black woman in this world, as I'm figuring out how I want to show up, you will see like different things. Like I may include an intro in one video and not in the other. I may film something in a certain space with a different background, and then in the next video you won't see me in that background. And it's just me kind of experimenting with how I want to show up on this platform. All this to say is that I'm still learning, and to bear with me as there will be shifts and thumbnails, and there will be shifts and intros and shifts in the type of videos that I like to create. But ultimately, it will always be book related. It will always be coming back to what we both collectively enjoy, which is the discussion around books. So with all that being said, let's get into the 10 books that I want to talk about that are releasing in 2026. So I have my handy dandy little notebook. I wrote down the release date, the title, and a little blurb about the book, and then also why I'm interested. So the first book I want to mention that's coming out in 2026 is by Jumata Emill, and it's called I Don't Wish You Well, and it comes out January 20th. This is a book about a teenager named Price, who is an investigative podcaster who covers the details of a true crime that happened in his hometown in Louisiana, where star football players of a high school team were murdered. Though the killer was found, Price uncovers info that may blow this 5-year-old case wide open. He heads to his hometown to investigate, which is a personal challenge for him, as he has not returned home since coming to terms with his sexuality. So my interest in wanting to read this book is that, one, I really do want to read more books that take place in Louisiana, and I'm also just intrigued by the title. I love a whodunit. I love like when characters are confronted with the difficulties of like leaving home and then coming back again. All of that 100% interests me. The next one I want to talk about is With Love from Harlem by ReShonda Tate, and it releases on January 27th. Now, when I looked up ReShonda Tate, first of all, I'm very much familiar with ReShonda Tate's work. I know her, or have known her as ReShonda Tate Billingsley, and I noticed that when I looked up her work on Fable, I'm not sure if Goodreads is the same way, but when I just looked up ReShonda Tate, I couldn't find any of her previous work. But if I looked up ReShonda Tate Billingsley, I could find all of her previous work, just in case you were interested in looking up her previous work. But this book is a historical fiction novel about a jazz performer named Hazel Scott and her life in Harlem. In 1943, Hazel Scott meets a man named Adam Powell Jr. in the midst of the civil rights era. And this man is married, okay? He is married, and they have an affair that eventually turns into a tumultuous marriage, one that forces Scott to choose between her family or her career. So this novel is a romantic drama of the 20th century that takes place in Harlem. I am not huge on romance at all, but I will read pretty much whatever ReShonda Tate comes out with because I grew up with her. I remember a time when I was taking dance classes, and I was taking dance classes in this kind of like two-story strip mall. And on the second floor was my dance class, and below it was this Black-owned bookstore ran by this woman. And my mom would always be in there while I was in dance. And then when I would get out of dance, I would go to the bookstore and look for myself. And I would always gravitate towards ReShonda Tate's books. There's a series called the Good Girls series. I ate that series up, honey. So I am always going to want to read something by her because it just has this like nostalgic feeling for me when I interact with her work. The next one I want to talk about is On Morrison by Namwali Serpell, and this comes out January 27th. And Namwali Serpell is a teacher from Zambia who teaches American literature, and she has spent a lot of time with Toni Morrison's work. So this novel is going to dive into like analyses of Morrison's work, spanning from her criticisms to her lesser known work to her poetry. And this is a no-brainer for me. I love Toni Morrison's work. I have not even scratched the surface on Toni Morrison's novels. I've read a couple of them twice. I've read a couple of them once, and I'm excited to get into a book that's going to kind of help guide me through maybe the thought process behind Toni Morrison's work. I looked up Namwali Serpell, the author, and I just found her on Instagram, and her energy is so interesting. Not interesting in a, her energy is so vibrant and so passionate, is what I want to say. Like, she talks about, why she teaches American literature as a Zambian citizen and the effects and the reason behind that. And then she talks about the importance of reading books. So I am also just interested in her now as a person to want to read more of her writing. The next one I want to mention is called The Seven Daughters of Dupree by Nikesha Elise Williams. This book releases in January 27th, and it is a novel that explores the 7 generations of Black women from the early 20th century to the 80s. And that's all I have to say about that one. I love historical fiction. I love when we are spanning generations. I love a generational saga. I will just eat it up because I think historical fictions are a great way to, reading in general, right? Reading fiction in general is a great way to build empathy. But when we're doing it through fiction, I think it's also very natural for us because a lot of our history and what we know about our history is told or passed down through stories. And fiction gives me that same sense, especially historical fiction, where we're specifically looking at one person's life. So that's 100% on my radar. The next one I want to talk about is Keepers of Lost Children by Sadeqa Johnson. That comes out February 10th, a day after my birthday. And it is Johnson's 3rd historical fiction novel, and it takes place along 3 different timelines. So Johnson explores how one woman's vision changes the fabric of several people's lives, okay? I have not read any of Johnson's work. I have not read Yellow Wife, and I have not read The House of I have not encountered, okay? So many books and so little time. But I need to because I do love historical fiction, and the only thing I'm skeptical of is the jumping of the timelines. It's not usually my favorite style of writing. That interconnectedness of people through time is not my favorite approach, but again, I have heard great things about her work, so of course I had to add it to the list. The next one I want to talk about is called Kin, a novel by Tayari Jones, and it comes out February 24th. This story chronicles the friendship and personal lives of 2 motherless daughters from Honeysuckle, Louisiana. Though they've been friends their whole young lives, the 2 women end up leading very different lives because their backgrounds are very different. So Venice joins a sisterhood of powerfully connected Black women and marries into an affluent family, while Annie becomes fixated on finding her mother to fulfill the void in her life. So I love stories that follow the journey of Black girlhood into adulthood, especially as it relates to friendships and the attention to the complexities of growing up as a Black woman in the, or what did I just say? When you get ahead of yourself and you start talking faster than your brain can even compute. Stories that journey Black girlhood into adulthood and the attention to the complexities of growing up a Black woman in the American South, okay? Because that comes with a different set of situations, all right? So I read Silver Sparrow by Jones, loved it, enjoyed it, and I still need to read American Marriage, but again, so many books, so little time. The next one I want to talk about is called Shut Up and Read, a memoir from, wait, hold on. The title is, this is the whole title. Shut Up and Read, a memoir from Harriet's Bookshop by Jeannine A. Cook. It comes out on March 10th. This book is following Jeannine Cook's story of how she left an abusive past to build a bookshop on the precipice of COVID-19 in Philly. She named her bookstore after Harriet Tubman, whose first stop to freedom was in Philadelphia, or also known as the City of Brotherly Love. To this day, the bookstore remains open, and it has several satellite bookstores, which satellite bookstores are just like, branches of the main bookstore. And I'm curious and excited and interested about this book because I just finished reading Black Owned: The Revolutionary Life of the Black Bookstore by Shar Adams. I finished this yesterday. Yesterday would be Monday for me. And I loved learning about the history of Black-owned bookstores, from its first Black-owned bookstore in the 1800s to Black-owned bookstores that are open now. And so I'm very interested in reading about her trajectory in opening a Black-owned bookstore and what kind of challenges she's faced. Super interesting perspective. The next one I have on my list is Sister of Mine by Maire-Claire Amuah. I wrote, I'm not sure if it's an N or an M, but when I have the picture up, you'll know exactly what her name is and how to say her last name. My handwriting is a little messy here, but it comes out on April 4th. And this is a story of Sika, who is a successful woman living in London who travels home to Ghana to reconnect with her family and to reconnect with a country that she left not long after she was born. While there, she uncovers a family secret that changes her life, okay? And I wrote plot twist with an exclamation point because I'm hoping and thinking there's gonna be a plot twist. I love family dynamics, secrets, and I'm also, like I mentioned, I think about, which book was that? The very first one, I Don't Wish You Well, is I love seeing how characters interact with going back home, because going back home can mean different things for different people. Being someone who's like traveled a lot and moved around to different places, sometimes home can feel just like wherever you are at any given moment, and it's hard sometimes to feel that connection. So I'm interested in learning and seeing, I'm interested in seeing how she connects with being gone so long, and if there will be a plot twist in the mix. The next one is one that I'm super excited about because the title caught my eye and because I can relate. It's called Refusal, It's called Refusal. It's called Refusal, Black Women Workers and Emancipatory Struggle, by Keona, Ervin, and it comes out May 5th. Okay, so in this, what I can glean from what little information I could find is that Ervin explores American history from the perspective of Black women and workers, and she uses this angle to point to ways in which refusal from slavery all the way to hashtag Black Lives Matter points us all towards emancipation. I love this concept because Black women have been the forefront of all the movements, like we've been there, okay? And so we are at the forefront of liberation, and it's going to be interesting to see how she talks about activism, how she talks about the act of refusal as a part of activism, and how that in itself is a way to guide us to freedom, okay? And the last one I want to talk about is, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I think it's Ghalen or Ghalen. But this book comes out by Walter Mosley. This book is a coming of age story about Ghalen and his friend. No, let's start over. This is a coming of age story about Ghalen and his family. His mother is a scientist and his father is a gentle cook at a vegetarian restaurant. His two parents couldn't be any farther from different, but their love and their connection as a family acts as the very basis that carries Ghalen into adulthood, as the story chronicles the peaks and valleys of a variety of characters that he will interact with on his journey. This novel just sounds really honest, really endearing, and I have a feeling it's going to be super heartwarming. And that is all the books that I want to talk about that are coming out early 2026. We'll come back in a few months and into the new year, and then we will do another one of these videos that touch on books that are coming out in the summer, fall era, okay? But let me know if there are any books that I mentioned that maybe pique your interest. Maybe there's a book that you already read that you may have an arc for. I'm interested in knowing what your experience with any of these books are, if you've had an experience with them already, and what are some books that you're looking forward to in 2026. Thank you all so very much again for your support, your kindness, and please do like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you're reading in 2026, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!